The words "not guilty" cut through the courtroom like a blade, leaving silence heavy in the air. Two officers smirked as they rose from the defense table, their uniforms gleaming under the lights. A grieving black family broke down, their cries echoing in the hall of justice that had just betrayed them. For most, this was the end, a verdict no one could overturn. But seated quietly in the gallery was a young black woman, her eyes unflinching, her hands gripping the file she had carried for weeks. She wasn't just another observer. She was a lawyer, and she had seen enough. Watch until the end. Wait a second. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories like this. Her name was Naomi Carter, a young attorney who had built her career fighting for those silenced by the system. Raised by a single mother who taught her that knowledge was power, Naomi grew up watching neighbors lose everything to biased policing. She vowed never to let injustice pass unchallenged. The case that drew her into this courtroom was harrowing. A young black man had been beaten nearly to death during a so-called routine stop. The evidence was overwhelming: footage, reports, and eyewitness accounts. Everyone expected accountability this time. Naomi wasn't the lead attorney, but she was there every day, determined to support the victim's family. Yet as she sat through the hearings, Naomi noticed cracks in the process. The judge, a man with decades on the bench, seemed less like a neutral voice and more like a shield for the officers. His rulings carried weight, but they also carried bias. Something deeper than prejudice was happening here. From the very beginning, the trial felt wrong. The video clearly showed the victim thrown onto the pavement, struck again and again while pleading for help. Witnesses testified, trembling as they recalled what they had seen. But time after time, the judge's gavel interrupted. Key footage was dismissed as inconclusive. Testimonies were struck from the record. Medical evidence was brushed aside with cold indifference. Naomi's chest tightened with each ruling. She had seen racial bias before, but this wasn't clumsy or hidden. This was deliberate. The judge wasn't just leaning. He was tipping the entire scale. By the time the final verdict rang out, "Not guilty," Naomi felt sick. The officers walked free, their arrogance on full display, while the victim's mother collapsed into sobs. Most people left defeated. Naomi didn't. She sat still, her mind racing through the inconsistencies she had noted. The subtle nods exchanged between the judge and the defense attorneys, the unusual pace of the hearings, the sealed envelope carried discreetly during recess. That night, Naomi began digging. She searched through public records, old rulings, and financial disclosures. The pattern was undeniable. Time and again, the judge had ruled in favor of law enforcement in high-profile brutality cases. But what made her blood run cold was what she uncovered next. Large, unexplained deposits into the judge's accounts, all linked to the police union. The judge wasn't just biased. He was bought, and Naomi knew she couldn't stay silent. Weeks later, Naomi returned to court, but this time she wasn't a quiet observer. She was the accuser, armed with documents no one could ignore. Before a packed courtroom, she laid out her case, presenting bank records that showed suspicious payments, emails revealing private meetings, and a trail of rulings that all pointed to corruption. Gasps filled the room as evidence flashed on the screen. The once untouchable judge sat frozen, his face drained of color. For years, he had hidden behind his robe, selling verdicts to shield dirty cops. But now, his power crumbled under the weight of truth. The same courtroom where families once wept in silence now erupted with hope. The officers' victory dissolved as federal investigators stepped in, not just against them, but against the man who had freed them. For Naomi, it was no longer just a case, it was a revolution. The scandal spread across the nation, exposing a system many already knew was broken. The corrupt judge was suspended, facing charges that could end his career and freedom. The officers once shielded by his verdict were forced back under investigation, this time under new oversight. For the victim's family, justice was still incomplete. But for the first time, the door was open. Naomi had shown them and the world that silence and corruption could be challenged. Yet for Naomi, this was not victory enough. It was a reminder that one voice could spark change, but countless voices were still unheard. Behind every exposed scandal were hundreds of hidden ones, waiting in the shadows. Her fight wasn't over. It had only just begun, and so the question remains, how many more stories must surface before justice is no longer for sale? Which country and city are you watching from? Take care.